Well, good morning, folks out there in interwebs land. We are here with Miyagi Mornings, episode 61. And again, we're answering somebody that came in on the MeWe post, which you can find my MeWe profile down there in the video notes and get on over there and friend me up. And you can contribute to that. It's sticky to the top of my profile. And this is the best way to suggest content for Miyagi Mornings. Today I'm answering a concern, really more of like explain to me why this is okay. And I've had this type of concern many times over the years. I've talked about it a lot on the podcast, but I don't know that I've ever talked about it in a short, YouTube video. And it's why are things like pond liners, treated landscape timbers, and tires safe for use in things like gardening and homesteading applications? Don't they have icky, gicky stuff that gets into the soil or the water and causes us problems? And let's start with landscape timbers. This is kind of the easiest one. There is just this stuck on 30 years ago mode that so many people seem to be in, shrieking and hollering and screaming about CCA, and specifically in the CCA preservative that they used to use on these landscape timbers 30 years ago and back. The A stood for arsenic. So this, of course, gave people a great deal of concern because arsenic is not a thing that we generally should be consuming in large amounts. However, I will point out that most soil has some arsenic in it. It's a naturally occurring substance. And even those old timbers really weren't that really worth worrying about. The thing is, they stopped using CCA so long ago that if you're going out buying timbers today, there's no way in hell you're getting a landscape timber with CCA in it. They now use something called ACQ, which the main preservative in there is copper, which was also in the CCA. The truth is that the new treatment that they use on these on lumber and specifically landscape timbers is probably not as good as the CCA was. It doesn't last as long, doesn't work as good. And the CCA lasted a lot longer, worked better, and was no real threat either. The amount that you would get from it leaching into a garden bed and then being taken up by a plant was so insignificant as to mean nothing. Because again, you do take in some arsenic in your daily activities, no matter how natural. In fact, the more natural you are, it's probably the case that take in a little bit more. It's not like if we get like a microgram of arsenic in us at some point, we're going to just kick over and die. All the testing that's been done on can you even detect any of the substances that are used to treat the timbers in a plant have come up with a goose egg, a zero. Very, very tiny small amounts in the soil. Difficult to detect after years of use, but it's there. Plants generally take what they want. When we use chemical fertilizers, we have to trick them into drinking those fertilizers. So when you're using compost and natural soil solutions and stuff like that, a lot of the things that we think of as toxins get locked up in that natural soil building remediation process. And that doesn't mean you should be dumping toxins on your soil, but these small amounts like this generally become locked up and not bioavailable to the plant. So it's already not dangerous. And then as long as you're not doing things in a very synthetic way, even what does get released gets locked up. So it's just not worth worrying about. Every time you take a breath, you're probably taking in more toxins than you would ever get if you ate every single meal with vegetables that were grown in raised beds made with timbers. It's just not an issue. Move on to tires. If you look at tires, one of the reasons there's such a problem from a disposal standpoint is they don't break down. They release almost nothing other than some off-gassing when they're first made. That's why if you walk into a tire store, it smells like tires, right? But my father ran a used tire store for 12 years when I was a kid. And I can tell you that, you don't even, we used to, have to go through the tires and find the ones that were, because he would bulk buy basically just tons and tons of used tires. And then he'd pick out the ones that still had some tread on them or still usable to sell, and you'd have to dispose of the rest. And we would have to load these big trailers, lacing tires all the way to the roof of these tractor trailers to get rid of them. And they don't have that smell. So even that off gassing is kind of gone after it's been on, because you're not going to use brand new tires in a garden or an earth chip or something like that. There's been testing done on that. They've never been able to determine that anything comes off the tires. There's been some FUD around a tire reef causing problems off the coast of Florida, but that's because they did it wrong. The things they bound the tires together with were not things that would last in an oceanic environment. So it was more of tires getting some air in them and floating and becoming a problem that way. They didn't cause any environmental problems. Many people use them in ponds for structure. There's no problems. Especially when you put anything in water, and that's why I'm kind of saving the pond liner for last. When you put anything in water, you get a really aggressive patina of biological life that forms on it. This happens on things like cinder blocks as well. People freak out because I use cinder blocks in my ponds, and they think that the cinder block is going to turn the water alkaline. Well, our water's already extremely alkaline anyway. That's why we use locally adapted fish. But that patina that forms is so strong that one time I put 2 half cinder blocks together in the water. And when I removed them, they were literally biologically glued together. You get a lockup that's, Bill Mollison talks about it extensively in the lectures that he did back in the 90s in Granbury, Texas at a PVC, about how even phosphates get locked up in these aquatic environments. So when you're in an aquatic environment, with any kind of anything, basically, unless it's like something that literally falls apart or breaks down, it forms this bio paint on it, and it literally just can't release anything into the water. Tires, when you're using them like for planters and stuff like that, or in a building or whatever, I don't think there's any real health concerns whatsoever. Again, I can't find a single bit of good science that says they leach anything significant anywhere. However, what I would say is, that doesn't mean they're not covered with toxins. So I think having them cleaned off before being used would probably make a lot of sense. And there's very few things in the world that makes a person as dirty as tire dirt. If you've ever had to work with tires, you look like a coal miner. And I'd say about the only thing that makes you nastier than tires is coal mining, and it's something else I have some experience with. And so I would want to like maybe pressure wash them or something like that, because you just don't know what's on them. But again, you're talking about a situation where any small amounts that can leach out of these things in natural soil systems end up locked up, especially when you get into soil that's being built through ongoing mulching. Basically, you're doing a slow compost, and that composting nitrogen carbon bond actually takes a lot of this stuff and makes it inert, to the point where if you look at Jeff Lawton's original Greening the Desert project that he did in Jordan, the first one, even the soil was salted, and these natural systems basically locked up the salt and made the salt inert, and plants that they didn't think could grow started growing. So what we have here is a situation where the things that people are concerned about already have a very low signature of any sort of leaching whatsoever. And then on top of that, we have this natural process of innate lockup of these types of things, which is why we should be growing things in as natural way as possible. The last one on the pond liner, this is one that's really not worth worrying about. The EDPM liners are basically food grade. They're fish safe food grade. I mean, you could theoretically package food. I mean, it'd be a really expensive way to go, but you could theoretically package food with an EDPM liner. So that's just, it's as safe as anything else out there. I think that we are right to concern ourselves with unnecessary intake of toxins into our body, and it's why I'm so big on growing your own food, producing as much as you can yourself, along with some other reasons for that, like food security. But I also think that we can really kind of drink too much of the environmentalist Kool-Aid, and we can become convinced that anything that's a chemical is dangerous to us. You know what a chemical is? Water would be a chemical. Water is a chemical. People say, I don't want any chemicals. You want water. Water's a chemical. Just saying. Anyway, with that, we've wrapped up another episode. We will catch you tomorrow with episode 62.